Welcome to the AJA Weekly Zoom event. My name is Robert Gregory, and also on the screen is Dr. David Adler, President of the AJA, as well as our guest tonight, Moira Deeming MP. The format will be interview style, followed by the chance to ask questions. If you'd like to ask a question, the best way is to raise your hand with the reaction button. Written questions can also be placed on the chat function, and if we have a chance, we may get to some. Moira Deeming is a member of the Victorian Parliament, best known for her advocacy for women's and children's rights. She has been vilified publicly for her advocacy. The attacks began after the Let Women Speak rally in Melbourne, which was crashed by uninvited neo-Nazis. She has consequently been smeared as associated with Nazis. Unfortunately, Moira was cancelled by another Jewish organization, which issued and then withdrew its event invitation. Their loss is our gain. So Moira, thank you for joining the AJA tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, I'm going to do just a little bit of scene setting and then we'll launch into talking to Moira. It's important to set an understanding of Jewish values, and you should be able to see on your screen a quote from the Torah, from Devarim, where it talks about a negative mitzvah, that a man's attire shall not be on a woman, and vice versa. And that's a pretty clear statement. Our sages interpret that not as a statement about fashion, but rather a statement about morality. And I think in that statement, we see quite clearly that the Jewish values affirm gender identity rather than gender fluidity. So if you want to take a strict Torah perspective, Devarim 22:5 gives you that. So Moira, I'm going to start by asking you what in normal circumstances should be regarded as a stupid question, but what is a woman?
Well, it's an adult human female. It's, it's one half of our sexual reproductive, two halves. Apparently
the first Prime Minister of Australia who was a woman, Julia Gillard, couldn't give an answer like yours. She waffled on for minutes, as you know, in quite vaguely. What do you make of our first female Prime Minister not being able to answer that question?
I think it's just indicative of the power of this self-censorship that is going on in our society. The fact that she was our first female Prime Minister, she was supposed to be a champion of women's rights. I mean, she played that female card, saying that people were harder on her because she was a female than if she was a male. People were all excited about the fact that our society had been able to produce a female leader. And now she has decided that she doesn't know who it is.
Well, Moira, you became quite well known, quite prominent as a result of events in Melbourne in March this year, when you spoke at a rally called Let Women Speak. Before we have a look at what might have gone wrong during that rally, what were the actual messages? Because, the other events overtook the messages. So what do you say were the central messages of that rally?
It's just this worldwide movement against extreme transgender identification laws, which remove child safeguarding, sex-based rights, which involve the safeguarding of, women's intimate spaces and women's right to have female intimate carers. They're just ordinary things that we have all agreed upon on the left and the right forever. It's not about controlling the way people dress. It's not about controlling people's beliefs. It's just about having good safeguards for women and children. And also it does, impact things like education, what's being taught in schools. It impacts reasonable freedom of speech, reasonable freedom of association, all those kinds of things. None of it is shocking, which is why they don't want to, the media doesn't want to talk about what we're saying, because it's not shocking and it's very reasonable. What they would like to do to get clickbait and funding like that is just have something outrageous, like there was up the road a little way, some vile Nazis.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you what happened on the day. and maybe I'll at this point, if I can do it, show our. Is that visible? No, that's not visible. Okay, maybe we're not going to get. Here we are. Try that.
There we go.
No, that's not going to work either. Looks like I'm not going to be able to play the video. I'll work on that as an aside. What I'll do instead is show people a number. This is a still shot from our Twitter account of the video that we compiled on the day, and you can see a circle in red that it's had 305.8 thousand views. So for us, that's quite a big deal, and indeed bigger than most media that would cover a story.
Certainly bigger than any Jewish organisation.
It'd be no other Jewish organisation in the country would achieve 10% of that coverage. They'd struggle to achieve 1%.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I actually pointed out the support that your wonderful organisation gave to us at the Let Women Speak rally, and how you vouched for us, which again, can I just say thank you on behalf of all of us that were there that day. And I was told actually that the Australian Jewish Association is very small and has no influence. And so I'm very glad to see that that's not the case.
Well, those numbers don't lie. By far the largest reach of any Jewish organisation in this country. So what do you know about those that crashed the event? Were they invited? Did anyone organise it? What actually happened on the day?
I mean, I had to piece it together from footage myself. So I got there after it had been set up with Kelly J. Keane, and at some point during the day, someone pointed out to me, you know, that there were men in black masks coming towards us, and we thought it was people who had broken through the police line and that they were going to come and attack us. I don't know if you saw the footage in New Zealand, but honestly, we thought that was about to happen. But no, they weren't coming towards us. They were sort of milling around on the side. The police were talking to them. I don't know. I didn't really pay attention after that, because I thought the police were dealing with it. I didn't see their first two salutes. I didn't even see the one on Parliament House steps, because at the exact same moment when they were doing that, we had our backs to them, and all of us, we were very far away, actually, sort of 15 metres away on the other side. And we were having our microphone ripped out of our speakers' hands right at that moment. So we didn't see that either, but I did see the one where they did it as they were being escorted out. And it was just, it's the first time I've ever seen that outside of a history book or a history documentary. You know, I'm a history teacher, and it was just so shocking. It was so shocking and upsetting. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. We all condemned it on the day. I found out later that the other people who were organising it had asked the police to make them leave, and they said, we don't have any move on laws. They're not being violent. We can't do anything. And we're dealing with all these other violent protesters. You know, we don't really understand why they were allowed to get so close. We don't know how it happened. But we know that we do know that there was chatter on the internet about the Nazis coming to fight Antifa or something like that. I didn't know about that until later, but apparently that was going on. So I assume the police would have known that that could happen, because apparently they came to fight the other counter protesters. Like, there's footage of them condemning us. I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't really know. They were sort of off to the side. It was all very upsetting and confusing. We thought they were going to attack us. They didn't.
I think I can show our 1 minute video now. I think I've got that fixed. Let's see how it goes.
You're protecting Nazis! protecting Nazis! Look at them! Look at what you're protecting! Actual fucking Nazis! Are you kidding me?
Yeah, well, that's the little compilation that we put together. That's the one that has had over 300,000 views on our Twitter platform alone.
And you can see from that footage that we had our, like, you know, we were a little huddle near the steps, you know.
What we could also see from that footage, which we commented on, was as rather odd policing, was the phrase that we used. They were holding back the Antifa types and the trans activists, but those who were dressed in black shorts and doing Heil Hitler salutes would just wave through. It seemed very odd.
We were all so confused. We don't, you know, I didn't even know that off to the right there was a whole entire bunch of protesters with red flags. They were the other socialist group that the Nazis had come to fight. So there was a socialist group and a Nazi socialist group, and they'd come to fight each other. That had nothing to do with us at all, and we got blamed for the whole lot.
Well, tell me, I've got to ask this: do you or any of the other women who were associated with organising that rally have any association with Nazis or neo-Nazis or, you know, white supremacists or people in that category?
No, of course not. It's ridiculous.
There has been some material put around. It's a public document, a dossier that was put together by John Pasuto that lifts things out of social media and alleges associations with inappropriate people. What's your assessment of that?
Well, I wasn't able to view any of that material until it was released to the public. I got it at the same moment, basically. But the day after the Let Women Speak rally, I was, you know, as is well known now, called into a meeting, and you know, a staffer started reading off a laptop these accusations and things, and you know, I did have a panic at first, and I just said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I've never heard anything like that. I don't know." And I thought, oh no, have I associated with the Nazi? Oh my goodness. But then I started to think, well, hang on, I've been following this woman and this organisation for 10 years on mainstream media. Why would I have not heard that? Why wouldn't I have heard that before? And I said, are you sure? I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that's probably true. Like, have you got incontrovertible evidence? Can I see the evidence? And I was not allowed to see it. And I was expected to denounce, not the Nazis. I'd already denounced the Nazis. Everyone had already denounced the Nazis, but I was expected to denounce the Let Women Speak organisation and Kelly J. Keane without seeing anything. And then, you know, and Angela Jones's tweet as well, which I hadn't even seen at that stage. So that's why I was, I guess, described as refusing to denounce Nazis, but it was not the Nazis that I refused to denounce. It was these women that I refused, like I would anyone, to denounce as a Nazi, because it's a very serious accusation without incontrovertible proof. And I did go, when I got that dossier, I did go through and look into it, and I was very shocked because I just thought, as a teacher, you know, this is Wikipedia that you've referenced, and every time I click through one of the references, even when I read the document that it refers to, the article refutes your claim and Wikipedia's claim, which is why Wikipedia is untrustworthy, and I don't accept it in my essays from my students.
Okay. The person who seemed to feature most frequently in that dossier was Kelly J. Do you think she might have perhaps not done sufficient due diligence in some of the people she's interviewed with, and that sort of thing, that, you know?
Well, I did ring her about that, and I said, what happened? And so she went and did an interview with some YouTube show. I don't know, I don't really watch YouTube shows. Anyway, and after she did that, she thought the guy was nasty and she didn't like him. But after that, she was, you know, accused of having consorted with someone who had platformed Nazis or something like that. I think he had interviewed a Nazi once or something, to be controversial or something. But she has an email in her possession from the secretary of that show apologising to her and saying, "I'm really sorry. I should have told you about that. I knew that would probably happen to you and I didn't warn you, and I'm really, really sorry." The secretary of that show felt bad, and she's got that. I mean, all of this will come out in her case. But, there was no due diligence. There was no requesting for information from Kelly J. Keane. She wasn't given an opportunity to refute the allegations. I wasn't given an opportunity, to refute them without sort of blowing up the party, and I was trying to work it all out internally, other than just saying it wasn't true,
Yeah. Well, all we can do is have a look at the messages that people articulated in Melbourne in March, and the messages that we heard. And if anyone wants to look at the videos of your speech and the speech of others, it's essentially about protecting the integrity of women's sport, change rooms, toilets. I think women's prisons were mentioned as well. Things that have exactly zero to do with Nazism.
And race at all. I mean, they're totally, completely unrelated.
Yeah. So that's why that's one of the issues that got us involved. We think that the inappropriate use of Nazism undermines the fight against real anti-Semitism and
Yes.
real Nazism, as well as being highly disrespectful to those in the Jewish community who have
Yes.
survivors and their families.
And that's one of the things that I don't think the leadership understood. And I mean, I didn't think to tell them, but that was one of the reasons why I felt so strongly about not denouncing anybody as a Nazi that I wasn't 100% sure was a Nazi. My uncle was a Holocaust survivor, and I was raised to view that event with such reverence that, you don't use that word unless you're sure. It's a serious topic. It's a serious word. You'd never, ever use that word. And I know it sounds bad, but I was glad that he wasn't around to see it used against his niece.
Well, we also published an article at the time. That's the online version on the screen at the moment. And if you just look at the headline, it's about weaponising the Nazi smear. We called it out as being inappropriate, grossly inappropriate for domestic political point scoring. And the subtitle, which I think must have been written by Rowan Dean, is that Labor and Liberals' shameful treatment of Moira Deeming. And I guess that will be determined in the legal processes, so we won't discuss that further.
It seems that way.
It seems that overuse and misuse of words like Nazi, anti-Semite, racist, it's something we've called out pretty consistently. You even have Jewish people like Avi Yamini, they call a Nazi. AJA has been called anti-Semitic, so it's a real problem. It really takes away from the fight, and it's very unfortunate. And unfortunately, some of our Jewish organizations engage in this misuse.
Okay, fair comment. I want to move on to another issue, Moira, that you're intimately involved in, and I know we have online with us a number of parents. I'll see if I can share one more document. Here it is. You should be able to see that this is a document from a manual school in Sydney. It's sent to parents. It concerns, well, read the first line. On 7 August, Year 8 will engage in a workshop delivered by -18 on gender and sexuality. And then it goes on about the sort of things that it will address. Now, I'd never heard of -18. Do you know anything about it, Moira?
I am very familiar with -18. That was one of the first resources that I ended up finding when I was investigating whether or not it was true that the resources that were coming in under the umbrella of the Safe Schools curriculum program, which has now sort of been transferred into a whole of school sexual health kind of, it's not even a curriculum anymore. It's just a part of the way schools are running in terms of anti-discrimination, like our, like any workplace now. But that was one of the first ones that I looked at, and I was just horrified at what was on there. I just could not believe it was legal. I don't want to go into the details. It is truly, they've actually tidied it up quite a lot. And it's still shocking and outrageous, but they used to have, I don't know how much detail I can go into, David, but it's revolting things. So we're not talking about, when you hear about sexuality and gender now, it's not what we think. What we would think as reasonable people, we would think that is, how do you get pregnant? How do you avoid getting pregnant? What is the age of consent? Just ordinary mechanics of sex and sexuality, STIs, being careful, things like that. What do you do? Resources, I don't know, general things, not really taking a moralistic view unless you're perhaps in a religious school, like a Jewish school, Christian school, Muslim school. That would be fine because you're supposed to have religious freedom. And that's it. But this is not that. This talks about sex toys. This talks about, it's erotic. It is an sexually erotic curriculum. And from my perspective as a teacher, I just thought that's inappropriate. You don't actually talk to other people's children about erotic sexuality. You don't even barely talk to about your own children because they're children. You would only talk about it in response to a question, and then you'd be very careful. But these children that are submitted to these programs, they're very traumatized afterwards and very confused. That's what the feedback I'm getting from my students and from parents all over Victoria.
Correct me if I'm wrong, year 8 is sort of 12 years old, maybe 13?
Maximum 14, some of them, maybe.
So you're talking about children that are below the age of consent being exposed to, non-traditional sexual information, let me put it that way.
Unsolicited, graphic, erotic, sexual information from adults that are not their parents, that there is no context for this conversation in coming up. These things are pornographic. They are just absolutely pornographic. I used to give speeches all around Victoria where I took the New South Wales, how to spot grooming behaviours.
Yep.
And I would line it up next to the Safe Schools curriculums. The first step is that you sexualize their environment and you introduce sexual content through words and images. You sexualize their environment, you make them feel like it's normal. And then when you push their boundary, they don't know that it's abnormal anymore because their whole environment has been sexualized. These are very dangerous things. Even a well-meaning teacher thinking that this is all about free expression, what they're actually doing is they're eroding a child's natural sense of what is a safe and appropriate kind of behavior for adults. And it's not safe and it's not appropriate for adults to be talking to children about erotic sexuality and intimate development of their bodies in a way that is sexual. That's not appropriate. And they're not going to be able to tell the difference between a good adult and a bad adult if all the good adults are doing the same first 5 steps as a bad adult.
You're talking about the first 5 steps in grooming.
Grooming, absolutely, I am.
Yeah. Well, you're now a politician, so I'm going to ask you the political perspective. The feedback we get is that this is an enormous issue amongst average parents, grandparents who don't want their kids pushed in this direction. And yet you're quite rare. There are a few people who are speaking out. I think Senator Claire Chandler, who's also been an AJA guest, is doing a great job at federal level. But for those political parties that are on the centre-right conservative spectrum, shouldn't they be championing this? Shouldn't it be a major upfront issue? It would seem to me to be a lot of political capital there.
I think there are a lot of people in politics that are genuinely out of touch with ordinary people. But I've just come out of, 15 years of being a teacher, every day in touch with ordinary kids and their parents. And I mean, even if you weren't going to address this issue on the basis of morality and what's right and wrong, you could still address it on the basis of political wisdom, because of course it's a vote winner. Of course, the vast majority of parents and families don't want their kids exposed to this and accused of being, unsupportive or hateful or bigoted or, if you're not being inclusive, all these disgusting emotional manipulative tactics that are being used against our vulnerable children are also being used on people in the workforce and in society. And I think part of that is people just don't want to be, called homophobic, and they think that, the trans issue is the same as the gay issue, that it can slot into adult society and it's not going to impact the children. But this is a different issue. Other things have come along with it, For some reason now, child sexuality is a thing, and I think, but children aren't sexual. Where did that come from? That idea, where did that even come from? Why is that in my curriculum as a teacher? I don't agree with that statement, and I don't want people around my children that think that my children are sexual. They're pre-sexual. What are they doing?
Moira, just before we open up to questions, there's one other issue that you have been involved in, and that's calling out some of the transitioning issues. Can you just make a couple of comments, a bit of an update on what you found out about this, what's happening in Australia, particularly with people under 18, children who might be involved in gender transitioning?
Well, first of all, I'll say that the laws I'm about to tell you about in Victoria, they're cookie cutter laws. They've been lifted from Canada and the UK, and Scotland and other places, and they're rolling all around Australia. So they're already in place in Victoria and they're being rolled out in other states as well. And the set of laws is basically this: if you do not affirm a child in a transgender identity or in whatever gender identity that they want, that is the equivalent of some kind of child abuse. So parents are at risk of losing custody. Doctors and psychologists, they're at risk of losing their licenses. But the sad reality is that, of course, minors cannot consent. They cannot consent to losing their sexuality because they do not know what sexuality is. They cannot consent to getting, losing their bone density and getting osteoporosis early in life. They cannot consent to going into catastrophic early dementia because they've had a full oophorectomy. They cannot consent to that because they do not understand, and we should not allow that to ever happen if they're under 18. Never, never, never. And the fact that nobody is allowed to even try and stop them from going down that path in Victoria without suffering some kind of legal consequence means that once they're on, once they have all these things introduced to them in schools or on the internet or wherever else, and they go down that path, there's no way to slow them down. There's no way to put the brakes on. There's no legal way to really hold them back from making that catastrophic decision, which is irreversible. And we know now from all the other places in the world that are rolling back the totally free affirmation or the enforced affirmation, no holds barred affirmation, because it always, if you start very young, you're on puberty blockers, which stunts your development. That entrenches the gender dysphoria that they are experiencing and are distressed by. And they inevitably go on to, almost 100% of cases, cross-sex hormones and surgeries. And these things, children are being harmed. We cannot allow this to go on. And so I've called for an inquiry on the 18th of October. It'll be debated in the upper house in Victoria for medicalised gender affirmation of minors. All the evidence is out there, and parental rights have been removed. The rights of doctors and psychologists have been removed. Everyone who tries to talk up about it is at risk. But there are so many of us from the left and the right, every political party, every kind of sphere, teachers up to the, I know a surgeon, who doesn't want to do these surgeries. We're speaking out. We're being punished, but we're speaking out anyway because it's for the sake of children.
I think a similar concept was raised by One Nation in the Senate, but got voted down. Just putting on my medical hat for a moment, there is a foundational medical ethic, which in Latin is primum non nocere, firstly, do no harm. And I would say that doctors that are involved in these practices are in breach of foundational medical ethics. Tommy, do you see a possibility of class actions, legal actions down the track? Is that occurring anywhere in the world?
Yes, so I haven't seen a class action yet, but I've seen some individual cases that could lead to class actions. So in the UK, there's a famous one, Bella, I can't remember her last name now, but it's absolutely coming. You can see the insurance companies are withdrawing their coverage for doctors that, you know, do anything to affirm a transgender identity that leads to some kind of medical intervention, but before the age of 18. And that's becoming common. The problem in Victoria and other states is that how are these kids who are harmed, who are they going to sue when nobody broke the law? You know, it is just so scandalous. The only way we can help these children is by getting these laws overturned. And I just think it's outrageous that anyone would vote against even an inquiry into these things,
Right.
Just at the risk of any child being hurt. You would absolutely, if they've got nothing to hide, then you hide nothing. It's not wasted if it's for child protection. Nothing, you know, nothing would even be lost. It'd be win-win to find out that they hadn't been harmed if that's the case.
Right. I'm going to do our 1 minute promo, and then we'll open up for questions, and Robert, you can take over. But as we do every week, at the end of the event, if you're not yet doing something to actively support AJA, please go to the website, jewishassociation.org.au, where you can apply for membership, you can make a donation, you can join the email list if you're not yet on our email list, and make sure you like and follow the AJA Facebook page in particular for daily updates on news and views. And just to show you what's coming in next week is the 30th anniversary of the Oslo Accords, and we have an incredible event lined up. Hugh Kitson, who's the movie producer of Whose Land, will be finalising the segment on the Oslo Accords, and we will be having the worldwide premiere of that particular segment shown at the AJA event next week. And the commentator who will be also joining us is Mordechai Kadar, who is an expert on Israeli-Arab relations, and talk about having two superstars of Israel advocacy join us with the worldwide premiere of the clip on the Oslo Accords as well. So all about the Oslo Accords next week. Robert, over to you.
Thanks, David. And yeah, I'll just say, Moira, AJ is in a very interesting position because a lot of the parents come to us from Sydney, from Melbourne, and you know, we saw the letter from Emmanuel there because many of them feel scared to go to the schools. They're worried about consequences for their children. So we're on the front lines hearing about what's going on in the schools. And if, you know, it's a bit graphic, so I won't read it out, but in the chat, someone's said something that's happened at Mount Sinai that's, you know, quite shocking. So if anyone wants to have a read of that, let's go to some questions. Let's go to Anne, you're first. So would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Hello, hello, Moira. Thank you for speaking with us tonight. I got to see you at the IPA function the other day. Look, I've been a member of the Liberal Party for many years, and I know it's a court case, so you can't go into too much depth. But is it a level of fear that politicians or people who represent it just can't make a stand, or what is it that's bringing out the worst in them? I'm a member of the Liberal Party. I can see it.
In my view, something has happened in, you know, and I think it's just we're at the tail end of people becoming more and more disengaged in politics. Basically, we need more members in the Liberal Party, paid up members in the Liberal Party with common sense, liberal values, you know, centre-right liberal values, to be engaged in helping pick who the candidates are so that we can steer this Liberal Party. We are 50% of the major parties in this country. You know, people can drop out and get upset with the Liberal Party and go and start a minor party or join a different party or anything like that. But the reality is that the legislation has created a two-horse race financially and in terms of power. These are the two horses, and no offense to anyone here who votes Labor. I come from Labor, I do, but it's not democratic over there. You can't influence the Labor Party, but you can influence the Liberal Party. And I believe in the Liberal Party values, and I think this ship is already built. It's a great platform. It's got some momentum and branding, and we just need really common sense members that are going to come in and vote on values instead of factional nonsense and personality politics. We need ordinary people who don't even want to get into a political career like yourself. We just need more and more ordinary mums and dads to swarm into the Liberal Party and just let them know what we really want. Because when I raise these things, I keep getting told, Moira, you don't understand. We have to go out there and face the media. And I said, well, that doesn't matter. You can just win the argument and speak to the people behind the media. Speak to the ordinary families. It doesn't matter if the media attack us. You know, we've got a duty to the people of Victoria to be standing up for our principles that we've got written down, so we shouldn't be confused about what they are. And that's our job. We get paid to do it. And so, look, I don't want anyone to despair about the Liberal Party. I know that what happened to me is very shocking to everyone. It's been terrible for me. It's been terrible for my family. But I don't blame the Liberal Party itself. You know, there was misinformation. There was all kinds of other elements that impacted what happened to me that have nothing to do with right or wrong. And that's a real shame, and it's just terrible, but I think it's going to be able to be undone. So just watch this space and we'll see how we go.
Okay. Next question. User, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Someone called User. I'll just remind everybody to keep the questions very brief. We've got quite a lineup.
I'm Hazel Moira. I met with the Liberal function at Willara.
Yeah.
Hi. And my question is, I don't know if you can answer this. Rita Panahi mentioned that you were about to meet with John Pasuto. I think he'd be absolutely crazy to go to court. I don't know if you can comment on where things are up to.
Well, we did have mediation and nothing was resolved. I think my lawyers have sent out another offer, and if that's rejected, then, you know, I mean, I don't know the details of what happens now. There's, you know, it happens between the lawyers, and if that can't be sorted out at that level, then, I mean, obviously I'm in the fight of my life for my children. I can't back down from this. I need this taken off my name, and I need all these things undone for my future and for my children's future. And so it's going to be very unfortunate if I have to go to court. But, you know, when you're fighting for your children, you'll do anything. So that if that's what it has to be, that's what it has to be. I don't know yet.
I think it's amazing how many people here are Liberals that support you from the Liberal Party. So that's also very interesting. Next question, we've got Courtney Schneider, and see what you have to say.
Hi, Moira. Thanks for taking my question. I've spoken to countless parents across different communities, different types of schools, primary, secondary. This has to do with, you know, what's going on in the schools. Even in the creches and the ELCs, this is happening. People are concerned. There's a critical mass of parents that don't want this going on. So my question is twofold. What are politicians doing about this specific issue about the schools? I know they may be few and far between, but what are they doing? And secondly, what's the most effective way for parents to push back?
So what are the politicians doing? Asking me to be quiet on this exact issue. I won't be, and neither will the parents. And the most effective thing that people can do, I mean, if the order of operations is that we need to change these laws, these are laws. The reason you can't get anything done and that pushing back blows up in your face is because the law is not on your side. Mm-hmm. You know, I was told as a counsellor when I was bringing up, even just questioning what these laws meant for public change rooms, I was told that if I brought it up in public live stream, that I could expect that the staff there would put in a human rights complaint about me for inciting discrimination against transgender people, just for asking what the law meant exactly. I mean, the law is not on our side. So that's one thing, because it's, you know, and we're going to get anti-vilification laws coming up next year, which I think will be really horrendous. I just think it's this double-edged sword that's going to start creating this litigious environment where we're all attacking each other. I don't know what the answer is to stopping spreading hate. I'm not saying I do, but in terms of what can we do about it, I really think, and I know it's going to sound party political, but I've been thinking about it. We need to change laws. How do we change laws? We have to get rid of Labor. How do we get rid of Labor? We need a really good opposition. How do we get a really good opposition? We need really good candidates in the Liberal Party. How do we get good candidates in the Liberal Party? The members need to vote based on values. How do we get members to vote based on values? We get all those disaffected, disillusioned, upset centre-right people that went out and started new parties. They're organised, they're driven. These fantastic people that the Liberal Party lost, and they need to all come back. They need to join, and they need to just help steer that ship. This is like 10, 15 years of me thinking it through. You know, I've really thought it through, and I don't see any other option unless you want to wait 30 years and spend millions of dollars to get 10% on the crossbench like the Greens. I don't think we have 30 years to get 10%. Like, we need to change these laws. We need to save these children. We need to get this stuff out of our schools, and I'm not waiting 30 years.
Moira, we've seen videos from America of parents confronting school boards. We haven't seen much of that in Australia. Is that something you would recommend?
Yes, David, but now you've just told everyone one of my secret policies that I didn't want anyone to know about before I just launched it. But yes, that is one of my number one goals, is to get the bureaucrats to have to face the people that their decisions impact, and not just in schools. I mean, that should be a principle of government, that these bureaucrats have to answer. You know, the boards everywhere should have to answer to the public, and it should be recorded and live streamed just like that. I think that's fantastic. I love that over there.
Hey, next up, Jeff, would you like to ask your question?
Greetings, Moira. The last three leaders of the opposition, Victoria, last two of them played musical chairs with their roles, and then Pasuta came along and is even worse. Why don't you and Tim Smith get together and form a private party? Because it seems to me that you would do a better job together with Tim Smith. Otherwise, it's more of the wasteful socialist left within the Liberal Party itself. Have a good time doing it.
Well, Tim Smith isn't in the parliament anymore, and I've been expelled. But the reality is, this is my party. When I read the Liberal Party set of values, I'm the one that belongs here, and the people that don't stand up for them, they're the ones that can leave. This is my party, and I'm not going anywhere. And we just need more people to come back in and be paid up members and have that decision-making agency and power and influence over who they pick as candidates. You know, it was the members that voted for me. Lots of people in, shall we just say, higher up positions, they didn't want me to be the successful candidate, but the members wanted me to be the successful candidate. The members have so much power in the Liberal Party. We've got to get people back into the Liberal Party, exercising that power.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of comments here in the chat. Mark saying, I'm a Liberal member, but I don't see the point of voting for them. Someone else saying, no Liberals that I know support John Pasuta's actions. We need more people like Moira in the Liberal Party. Lana's saying Moira for Prime Minister. So it's all going off in the chat. Josh, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, Robert, and thanks, David, for the invite. For Moira's context and others, I'm Joshua Rowe from the ACL, New South Wales State Director. Just coming in to ask a question specifically around those conversion laws that you're alluding to before, Moira. Obviously, you said that those are starting to flow out across the country into other states, and one of those states is New South Wales, which is where my concern lies. You've got the Minns government sort of proposing such laws. Having your experience down in Victoria with these laws that seek to enshrine affirmation therapy and these gender ideologies in legislation, what would you say is the best strategy for campaigning and pushing against these so we don't see it happen in New South Wales like Victoria? Thanks, Moira.
Thank you. So I try and always talk about this issue in terms of parental rights and best case evidence-based care for children. So I think it's ridiculous that politicians with absolutely no mandate to literally choose a set of medicines for a particular whatever condition and set it in stone for all time, because obviously medical evidence keeps on being built upon and changing, and it's, you know, finessed and things like that. It should just always be able to be going along with and matching whatever is the latest, best evidence care. So that's number one. So I just think you're not going to get best practice medical care if you use legislation to lock something in like that. And parental rights. I always talk about parental rights. So they always try and frame me as talking of, you know, being anti-LGBTQ. I just reject that completely. And I just talk about, no, this is about parental rights and this is about best case medical care for children. But if you want parents on board, you just have to let them know that they're going to lose their parental rights. And like so many people here and all the parents of my students, you know, and me as a parent, I mean, there is nobody that we will not ditch. Nobody that we will not ditch in an election if they're going to take away our parental rights.
Okay, Mr. Cohen, would you like to ask your question?
I think it's a little bit of a dream to think that the Liberal Party is going to get elected, no matter how bad Andrews and the Labor Party is. The Liberal Party just does not present with the values that you are speaking about. And I think you have shown to the population of Victoria enormous courage and determination in following a path to bring safety and security to the youth of this state. And I think if you started a new party, call it the Children's Freedom Party or something like that, you would find an influx of like-minded people with ability that would join your party and bring it to power in the Parliament of Victoria. I feel very strongly speaking about that, as some will think that it's not such a daunting position. Do you think that anyone is going to talk better than what you've spoken? Do you think anyone is going to bring up better views than what you have said?
I think you made your point. We'll ask Moira.
Yeah, I would like her to stand with a new party.
Well, it's very flattering. I'm not the only one in the Liberal Party, not by a long shot, that believes the things that I believe, or that's been standing up for these things. It's like politics. It's just a matter of numbers. We just need a critical mass. That's what we need. And I was told when I first got into the Liberal Party by certain people that they loved it when people get disillusioned with the Liberal Party and they quit and they go and start minor other parties and they become independents. This was the sentence that was said to me, because we do what we like and we scoop up their votes on preferences anyway. And I never forgot that. And I thought that is a disgusting thing to say. It is absolutely repulsive. And I'm going to tell everybody about that so that they don't do what you want them to do and that they stay and they fight. So look, I'm flattered and I do understand the disillusionment. I do. I've been thinking about this for 10 years. I've been watching people come in and out of the Liberal Party, watching who gets pre-selected, watching what happens when they go into Parliament and then they just give up on all the things that they said and they're not held accountable. Yeah, the only way to get a major party, so my main point to you is this: we cannot govern from the crossbench. A party like that, they might get a few seats, they might get 10% in a while, like the Greens, but you can't govern from the crossbench. You don't get to dictate the laws from the crossbench. We need one of the major governing parties to be on our side. It's non-negotiable. Even if we do have some minor parties that are good and they help, we still need one of the major two parties to be on our side for child safety and women's rights. We'll never get anywhere without that. And I'm convinced that the best option is a Liberal Party, and I do believe in our values, and that's why I'm sticking in with it. So I am flattered, and it's very kind of you. And if I thought there was a faster way to get this done, I would be doing that. I do honestly think this is the fastest, surest way to get it done, though.
Okay, next question we have Jack. Would you like to unmute and ask?
You haven't unmuted yet, Jack. You need to unmute.
Am I clear now?
Yes.
Thank you very much for that. It's an issue that appears to be under the radar, but my wife and myself are very concerned about the reports we have of abortions carried out almost at full term, where the baby is born alive as a result of the abortion and is then left to die, comfortless, cold. I mean, is this really happening? What would Moira's comments be on that? And if it is happening, surely it's killing, it's murder, and there must be some way of legislating against it. Thank you.
So I'm on the record for being pro-life, and I believe that the mandate from society is, not as I would like it, but, the stats show that past the first trimester, people aren't so pro-choice as certain people, certain quarters of society would like us to believe. In terms of, failed abortions resulting in a live birth, yes, that does happen. In Victoria, it's legal to have an abortion, a partial birth abortion, straight up to 9 months, when you could deliver the baby, instead. So look, obviously I think those laws are very extreme and unfortunate. And, we don't collect the stats in Victoria about, abortions that are failed and result in a live birth, but they do in other states. And yes, I am as disturbed as you are by that. And I know that lots of nurses who have to deal with leaving a baby to die like that are very traumatized by that. We've got reports of that. And I do know that Senator Alex Antic and another couple of senators are putting up a bill to require that life-giving care is given to any babies that are born from a failed abortion. So look, but I always say this is one issue that we really need to win people over on, because I saw this as a teacher. The women and the girls who have abortions are just so traumatized. They're very damaged. They're very vulnerable. And they need compassion, and they need care, and they need options, and they need to know that people are going to help them. And I think they really fear that no one will help them. And I ended up learning from my students that they felt that they couldn't go to religious people because they thought they'd be really judged. And then they couldn't go to, even atheists when they were upset about the abortions that they'd had, because they weren't allowed to grieve that they'd had an abortion. And so there's all these women and girls stuck in the middle, not telling anyone that they've been through this experience, and they're traumatized. And they're not even told that they can be traumatized from abortion. There's lots of information about how it'll solve your problems, but they're not given both sides of the story. So look, I think there's lots we can do to really help educate girls about, how what might happen. They don't see any stories of happy mothers either. Like, I think motherhood's been denigrated in our society, in our culture. They're very afraid of motherhood. I was raised on the left. I thought being a mother was terrible. But then I had a baby and I fell in love with my baby. I thought, I love being a mother, but I was really afraid of it. I thought that was just, like a burden on women, like a curse almost. But I've totally changed my views. I've really come from the left to the centre right. So look, it's one of those issues where we really have to win people over on it. And they have to understand that we care about them, that we really care about them when we're talking about it. So it's a really tricky one to deal with. I'm on the record as being pro-life, but we need to show women that we really care about them when we talk about that. And that's a tricky issue.
Yeah, I have to say my eyes were really opened. I was at a recent conference where Alex Antic spoke, and I think it was actually the speaker from the ACL, the Australian Christian Lobby, that was talking about these abortions where the baby is still born alive and they just let it die. And it's crazy what happens. We've got a few more questions, not much time, so let's go to Andy. Would you like to ask a question?
Sorry, Andy, you need to unmute again.
Okay. Thank you very much for speaking up. It's very emotional what you do. In addition to doing what you're doing for your children, what motivates you every day? Because it's like you're having a battle day in, day out. And a lot of people can't keep up the speed. But what motivates you to make a difference in this world? Thank you.
I just will not accept ever children being harmed and put at risk, and women being treated like this, and men. It's, you know, it's already come out in the media. You know, my speech in the party room was leaked and it was splashed everywhere about my own history of sexual abuse, and that was absolutely horrendous. You know, having to tell the party room to explain to them that that is one of the reasons, because I know what it's like to be vulnerable like that. I know what it's like, and it's just, it's unacceptable to me. That's not something that I will ever lose energy to fight. It was an inexhaustible fury. It will never ever exhaust, because I've got 3 daughters. I was a teacher and I just love kids. I love young people. I don't know what else. There's just nothing more important than protecting children. I just can't even think of anything that I would rather dedicate my life to.
Wow, very inspiring. Yeah, I think we might have time for one more question. So let's go to Robert. If you'd like to.
Reuben. Yeah.
Thank you, Moira. Very courageous lady. I just want to ask, have you heard of the no hide code? Because the no hide code prohibits what's, murder and all that sort of thing. Have you ever come across the no hide code or looked into it?
No, I don't think so. I'm sorry.
It's available.
So I think, yeah, what Reuben was saying, so basically in Judaism, there's some basic laws that apply to all of humanity, and yeah, these very basic things, no murder, and many of the same principles you're saying, so they're very apply all around. And I'll also add just a little anecdote. So my wife is a teacher, and she did her placement in a public school in New South Wales, and some of the stories, you know, she got up to tell, you can't tell the children, boys and girls. She wasn't allowed to say that. She got in trouble for mislabeling a child who identified as the opposite sex or gender from what they were, and she had no idea. She wasn't even told that this child is now identifying as this. So it's a real problem. I think, yeah, some schools more than others. Now she's in a school which doesn't, it's a Christian school. It doesn't have those same issues. So
yeah. Well, on this one issue, the transgender laws, again, this didn't happen with anything else. Those religious freedom exemptions have actually been carved out. So your parental rights as a religious parent have been carved out in Victoria. You do not have a religious exemption to teach your children your religion insofar as it conflicts with transgender ideology.
Yes.
That's ridiculous, but it's already happened. We have to undo it, and the only way to undo it is to get rid of Labor with a good opposition that's already ready, set to go with proper Liberal values.
Sounds like a good plan. Well, Moira, we want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been very eye-opening, I think, for a lot of people, and you can only have to look in the chat. You can see, a lot of positive feedback you're getting there. Do you want to say anything, David?
No, I sometimes you meet people in public life that you click with, and it's all about values. And I'm personally, and on behalf of AJA, very happy to support the values that Moira Deeming is standing for. I actually think that men have to do more to support women in their fight for women's rights. We have a role as well, and I've made a number of public comments along those lines and will continue to do so. I think Moira comes across as an actual normal person in politics, which is, and we wish you every success, and you can be assured that you're dealing with an organisation here that you can work with, and we look forward to working with you further going forward.
Cannot thank you enough for your support through this whole process, and yeah, for having me on tonight. Thank you everybody.
Thanks, Moira. Well, just before we go, Everyone, the L'chaim show with Morris Klein is now on, 3ZZZ, FM 92.3, and the special guest tonight is going to be me being interviewed, so make sure you all listen to that. That's all we have time for tonight. Don't forget you can keep up to date with what AJA is doing by joining our free email list at jewishassociation.org.au, as well as our Facebook page and all our other social media. Thank you again so much, Moira. Thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you.